Hey everybody, this is your Black Gaddy coming back at you once again. And today I want to talk to you about one of the most beloved and legendary singers that we've ever seen. This is Mariah Carey. One thing about Mariah Carey is that you cannot deny her legendary status. Now, as far as recognition from the industry is concerned, Mariah Carey has won 5 Grammy Awards, 10 American Music Awards, 15 Billboard Music Awards, and 19 World Music Awards in total. And it doesn't stop there. She's the only solo artist to have 19 #1 singles on the Billboard charts. In 2022, she was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame for her contributions to music as a writer and a composer. Her vocal range is legendary. She has a 5-octave range, she has a whistle register, and she also has a melismatic singing style that changed the way music was played on the radio. Most of the best singers that came out after her have all mentioned her as an influence, from Pink to Adele to Jessica Simpson, Christina Aguilera. Even legendary singers like Beyonce, Rihanna, Mary J. Blige have all called her an influence. Now, but there are some issues with Mariah Carey. For example, she is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, even though she's been eligible to be nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame since the year 2016. Now in 2024, she was finally nominated. She had to watch as other artists, such as Mary J. Blige, walked right past her and through the doors of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, while she still must wait her turn.
Ain't no deny. Watch me bring the heat in the game, I'm flying.
Another issue is with her Grammys. She only has 5 Grammys. And you have people like Beyonce with 32, Aretha Franklin, she has 18. And not just the Grammys that she has, but she doesn't have any Grammys in the big, most important categories like record or song of the year or album of the year. But this is a problem across the board for females. For example, we know that Beyonce, with her 32 wins, has never won in those categories, except for when she won for Single Ladies, Put a Ring on It. She won Song of the Year. Aretha Franklin has never won in those categories. In fact, all of her wins have been in the category of R&B, except for one in the category of gospel. This is different from Whitney Houston, who may only have 6 Grammys, but she has won for Record of the Year for I Will Always Love You, and she also won Album of the Year for the Bodyguard soundtrack. Furthermore, Whitney Houston has 2 Emmy Awards and she has 19 American Music Awards, the most of any other artist. We would expect that Mariah Carey would have very similar numbers considering how popular she is, but this just isn't the case. And there's more. Lately, there have been a lot of allegations of lip syncing, of singing over pre-recorded tracks, of not giving her best in her performances. And people have started to maybe have a little less respect for her than they should, considering her incredible career. Mariah is a divisive diva. Her lambs are the people who follow her, her fans. They defend her to the death, of course. But there are haters inside and outside of the music industry who do not extend her the respect that she probably deserves. So the question is, am I, your Black Gaddy, a lamb or a hater? It seemed like the main objective of Mariah Carey's career was to sell as many albums as possible and to break as many records as possible. Sony knew what it had with Mariah. Here was someone who was like a new Whitney Houston, maybe not as gorgeous or as statuesque, but not as problematic either. And we knew that with Mariah Carey, she had the vocal skills arguably more superior than those of Whitney Houston, which would allow her to sell records anywhere in the world, and in massive numbers. I think from the very beginning, everything seemed to be very calculated about Mariah Carey, especially along the line with all the #1 hits that she eventually accumulated. It seemed like the fact that she would break the record for #1s was kind of a foregone conclusion. At the time, we didn't know if Mariah was on board with all of this or not. The fact that she was going to be put to dominate the charts, to dominate the adult contemporary charts with her ballads and with her torch songs. We didn't know if she was part of this or not, but she was the face for that campaign. And as far as we knew back then, Mariah seemed kind of just fine with it. They were pushing her in certain directions, and it didn't look as though she was resisting it at all. So happy was she with this arrangement that she ended up marrying the guy who signed her checks at the record company. Yeah, the marriage to Tommy Mottola. I mean, wow. I mean, that seemed like a really calculated move that raised a lot of eyebrows because it seemed more like, again, part of Sony's marketing plan than real love. Maybe it would have looked a bit more authentic if Tommy Mottola were cute, but he was 20 years her senior, short and dumpy. Even Whitney could justify her choice of husband. Bobby Brown, maybe he's not that good looking or whatever, but he was young and he was oozing with a lot of sexual energy. Tommy didn't have any of that. And when you look back at those pictures, even at the wedding, Mariah never really looked happy in any of those pictures. I mean, she looked miserable, actually. In contrast, take a look at her pictures when she was with Derek Jeter. She was absolutely beaming. We know that history would repeat itself because Tommy Mottola would later marry Mexican superstar Thalia, who was probably as popular in Latin America as Mariah was in the United States and Europe. And Mariah also briefly dated Mexican superstar singer Luis Miguel, who's also extremely popular here in Latin America. Mottola and Thalia are still married, and I think they have 2 children, while Carey and Miguel, their affair only lasted a couple years before it fizzled out. But we know that marriage, something seemed very awry about it from the very beginning. And I think that's another aspect that kind of bugged me a little bit about Mariah Carey, because I felt like it was just another marketing ploy. One of the biggest problems I had with Mariah Carey back in her heyday was the quality of her music. Her first album, maybe it wasn't a home run, but it showed a lot of promise. But similar to Whitney's musical trajectory, Mariah Carey's next 5 album releases, in my opinion, 1991's Emotions, 1992's MTV Unplugged, 1993's Music Box, the Merry Christmas album in 94, and Daydream in 95. They all built on Mariah's astonishing popularity and cemented her as the biggest star in the world. But for me, each of those albums, they seemed exceedingly tedious and boring, especially considering the immense talent that Mariah Carey had. I personally believe that she bounced back big time in 1997 with Butterfly. This is, for me, Mariah Carey's first album that satisfies from start to finish. That album forges deeper into R&B, a place where Mariah felt very comfortable. Songs like Honey, The Roof, Breakdown, Close My Eyes, I mean, these are highlights among highlights. Even though Tommy Mottola, being the kind of person that he is, did everything he could to kill that record by not releasing physical singles so that they would not chart, I still consider Butterfly to be a triumph for Mariah Carey. There's no denying that she put her all into that record, and it showed. And then in the years 1999, 2001, and 2002 came the albums Rainbow, The Glitter Soundtrack, and Charm Bracelet. 3 albums that were not well received by audiences. including myself. Her 10th studio album, The Emancipation of Mimi, was a breath of fresh air. I think this is what we were all waiting for so long from Mariah. The album was a breezy, enjoyable treat through and through. And It's Like That was the party jam of 2005. Of course, We Belong Together was a monster hit worldwide and one of the biggest of Mariah's career. I mean, it hit number one on several charts, and it actually ended up going 6 times platinum. And the album Emancipation of Mimi went 7 times platinum.
Do you have any tips for anyone who might be wearing such a dramatic slit?
I mean, I can't tell anybody how to wear their slit. Sorry. And I don't care what they do, frankly.
Then things between Mariah and I took another turn 2 years later when she released her single Touch My Body, which was the lead-off single for her new album E = MC Squared. I knew at that time that our relationship was over. A major problem with Mariah is that I feel that she lacks a career-defining song. I mean, when you think of certain artists, certain songs instantly pop into your mind. Billie Jean, Material Girl, Crazy in Love, or you have these images of an artist. There's, Prince with this purple trench coat, or Bob Marley with his dreadlocks. Now, when it comes to divas of Mariah Carey's standing, they almost always have a career-defining moment, that song that's transcendent, that will never die. Aretha Franklin has Respect. Whitney Houston has I Will Always Love You. Celine Dion, My Heart Will Go On. Even Minnie Riperton, Loving You. These are songs that will always stand the test of time. For Mariah, I think songs like If It's Over, Anytime You Need a Friend, or even Through the Rain could have been those career-defining songs for her. Unfortunately, I think that the song that's going to define her is going to be All I Want for Christmas Is You, which of course is a catchy tune, but it's also kind of gimmicky and trifling in many ways. And I don't know Mariah personally, but I know that she's very particular about being recognized as a songwriter. And my guess is that she would want the importance of her career to not be reduced to a Christmas jingle. I know it's been very lucrative for her, but it's almost an unfortunate mistake that this song has overshadowed so many other amazing aspects of her career. Granted, Mariah Carey must earn millions of dollars a year for All I Want for Christmas Is You, and it has helped establish her as the Queen of Christmas. However, it is very difficult to say if that same song is helping establish her as the Queen of Credibility. And another problem with Mariah was the glitter debacle. The whole thing of walking onto the MTV set with the ice cream trolley, it made her look a little cuckoo bananas. Though, when I look at it nowadays, it doesn't really seem like such a big deal. I mean, maybe she was a little drunk or she was tired, but not really much happened. The movie itself was pummeled by critics. It only made $5 million in theaters, but I don't think that's the real issue. I mean, we look at other artists who've made really bad movies. We cannot say that Cold as Ice.
Yep.
Oh my god.
Drop it.
Hey, watch yourself that way. Hey, be careful now. Out of the way. Yeah, let's go.
Is what tanked Vanilla Ice's career, or Graffiti Bridge.
The king has arrived.
is what drowned Prince's career. Britney Spears, Jennifer Lopez, Kelly Clarkson, they all starred in bombs, but they continue to have success. And who has been in more crappy movies than Madonna? I mean, despite being box office poison ivy for the most part, she still could bring the musical goods, and her career continued to flourish, despite her movie career. So the problem with Glitter was that Mariah's music was also taking a turn for the worse, so she could not fall back on that to keep her career afloat. But there's something else too. With Loverboy, we knew something wasn't quite right. The song was uninspired, and even watching the video was a bit difficult because you could see that something wasn't quite right with Mariah at that time in her life. The movie was just a reflection of whatever personal crisis that she was going through. And then there's the race issue. There was some racial ambiguity that was going on back then, and I think that it did not resonate well with Black audiences in the US, including me, as we often need you to make a definitive statement about your race. Nowadays, of course, we've gotten better with this, and we better understand that it's not fair, and it wasn't fair. Not to Mariah or to anyone else who's biracial, because Mariah Carey is not black or white. Mariah Carey is black and white. Now, back in those days, record companies had to be very strategic about where the physical CDs and records would end up in the record store. Now, if you were too black, your CDs might end up way in the back of the record store. That's poorly lit, that's difficult to get to. So they wanted to make sure that Mariah's records were placed right up in the front, where they could be easily accessed by all customers. I think her record company had a lot to do with this confusion because they treated her like a white woman who sang black, not like a black woman with adult contemporary leanings. They probably directed her to be coy about her race so that she would not alienate anyone, a posture that probably infuriated a lot of black listeners. When Whitney Houston hit, there was no question that they treated her like a black woman with adult contemporary leanings. They told her to tone it down. In contrast, Mariah was instructed to crank up the church in her singing so that her music would cross over to black audiences, not really the other way around. Think about a song like Vanishing, which is sung in a very churchy, overly inflected way that could have never appeared on Whitney Houston's debut album. I think one of the issues I had with Mariah back at that time is that I wanted her to be more definitive in the expression of her blackness, and not in the press, but in her music. Songs like Anytime You Need a Friend, If It's Over, Love Takes Time, Vanishing, those are songs that really brought out the best in her singing. And I thought that maybe she would go more towards that area and less towards the adult contemporary arena that her record company took her into. So, where do I stand nowadays with my relationship with Mariah Carey? Well, first of all, Mariah is 30 years older now than she was back then, and so am I. So, I know a lot more about her story now than I did before. I haven't read her book. I would like to read it, but I haven't read it yet. But I have seen many interviews before making this video to learn a little bit more about her backstory. And I went back and listened to many of her albums. And to be honest, I cannot say that I gained any additional appreciation for her music, but I certainly understood a lot more about where Mariah was coming from and why maybe she did some of the things that she did. The fact that she was basically forced into doing many things that she had to do. So how do I feel about her now? Mariah Carey deserves all of the accolades that she has gotten. It has been a very difficult ride for her as a woman, as a biracial woman in the industry that usually wants to have kind of a flash in the pan type of situation where they use you and then discard you at the next moment. But she's had a flourishing career for more than 30 years. And in many cases, she might be just as popular now as she was before, especially around the Christmas time. So I give Mariah Carey her props for showing us what longevity is. I'll also give her props for telling her story with honesty. She could have easily left out the part about her father being Venezuelan and Black. As we know, in Latin America, if you come from Colombia or Venezuela or Brazil or the Dominican Republic, you can be white, you can be Black, and you can be everything in between. But Mariah Carey always made sure to let us know that she is Black and white. And that's the most important part of this lesson that we get from Mariah Carey, that you don't have to choose. And for those children who are growing up, for those young people growing up in places like the United States who have that confusion, Mariah Carey's stories should serve as inspiration for kids who are going through exactly the same thing. And finally, I give Mariah her props for giving us I Don't Know Her. That is one of the most meme-ready catchphrases we've ever seen, at least since Sweet Brown gave us Ain't Nobody Got Time for That. Mariah, you deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You deserve all the accolades and kudos that you have received throughout your 30-year career. And you deserve to be respected by people inside and outside of the industry, because God knows that it's very difficult to stay relevant, to stay popular, and to stay on top of your game for so many years. So kudos to you, Mariah. I'm ready for us to enter a new stage of our relationship. And I hope that, hey, text me sometime. We'll go out, get something to eat, get a pizza.